12 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I taught you one piece of information that you'll need to know as a new cadet. That's that we raise our hands either all the way down or all the way up. We don't do halfway. The other thing is you'll find that when you have class with me, which you all will, I start class on time and I end class on time. Now, part of that is the punctuality and, standards and all that sort of stuff. But the other reason I do it is to show respect for the professors here on campus. They're going to have 15 minutes to get between classes. And some of those classes, you're going to be really moving to get 15 minutes one direction or another. So since I know it might take you 15 minutes to get here, I'm not going to start early so that you can get to my class. And I'm also going to end on time so that I respect the other professors on campus and give you the full time to get to their classes. So we're going to start right on time. So you might have also noticed I changed clothes. I did that because we're shifting the topic a little bit. And we're going to talk today about the idea of stress and some things you can do now to start getting yourself ready for the stress that we know you're going to face, regardless of whether you come to the Corps of Cadets. But the Corps of Cadets we recognize is going to be an additional stressful environment, and we do that on purpose. So see this some of the things we're going to talk about today. I'm going to lead this off, and I'm going to turn over to my partner from Hokie Wellness, Sonia, and she'll talk you through some of these activities, and we've got a video for you as well. So we talk about stress, and stress is important because as leaders, since we've chosen this path of being leaders and being part of a leadership growing or learning organization, leaders have to be able to operate under stress. We don't get to pick and choose when we lead. We have to recognize what stress is, and we have to be able to function through that stress. So those of you who don't know, Admiral Stockdale was the senior American POW during the Vietnam War. And he earned a Medal of Honor for his leadership while he was in that POW status. And so we talk about stress as an important part of being a leader and being able to function through the stress. And so not make the stress go away necessarily, but being able to function. So if we to help you with that, we try to remind you why you're here. The first and most important reason you are here at Virginia Tech is to get a degree. That degree is the pathway, regardless of what your follow-on goals are. That degree is the nexus by which all of you must travel in these current paths. Now, there are other paths that don't require a degree. We get that. But the one you've chosen by being here, it does have the undergraduate degree. So we want to make sure we put things in place to allow us to function, to get that degree, to perform academically. But we also recognize that as cadets, we have chosen to do something more. We've chosen a different path. That development of our leadership ability and skills alongside those academics, we recognize this is a path to self-discipline, a path to self-improvement. It's self-sacrifice. It is a harder path, and we understand that. And so we want to give you some tools to help you through that. And some of those things are to remember a couple things that you have done to this point. In order to be getting in this chair right now, you have made decisions and sacrifices and done things to put yourself in this position. Probably over the last 4 or 5, even 6 years, whether that was taking those extra AP classes or not going out on the weekends because you were working on that Eagle Scout or Gold Award project, or signing up for the extra classes over the summer, or being on that travel soccer team, or whatever you've done over the past 4 years or so to sacrifice to get here. Keep those things in mind, because when you have that dark moment of the soul that General Edwards was talking about, that's one event. You've done 4 to 6 years of working up to this point. Don't let one thing derail you. So that's one of the things we'd like to encourage you to remember. The other thing we'd like to encourage you to remember, this is a 4-year program. It starts with the beginning. You are not going to be a perfect cadet on day 1. I would argue you will not be a perfect cadet on day last either. But you're not going to be perfect on day 1. There are going to be a lot of things that we're going to present to you and ask you to do that you can't do right now. That's okay. You will be able to eventually. Just as an example, I asked the cadets early on in each semester or each year how long it takes to get their uniform ready for inspection in the morning. And somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes is what they tell me during the first couple of weeks of classes. I asked that exact same question at the end of the semester, less than 5. Why? Because over that period of a year, they've gotten better at it. They didn't do it very well at first. So that's another thing we want you to keep in mind. And then lastly, please, we want you to keep in mind why you're here. We're going to talk a little bit about that more. But keep that in mind when you face adversity, because you will. Keep that why in mind and recognize that the adversity that you're facing is temporary and part of the process to get to that objective or goal that you set for yourself, which includes graduation and whatever other element you have along with that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sonia, who's going to talk to you about some of the skills that we'd like you to be able to learn.
Hi everyone, my name is Sonia Doulamis and I'm the Associate Director for Education and Prevention at Hokie Wellness. And I'm one of the individuals who has the honor to be able to work with CAPT McGrath and the other staff here with the Corps of Cadets. Pretty closely. We come in pretty often throughout the year to guest lecture in different classes and just talk about more of how we can help serve you as students at Virginia Tech, but specifically in your roles as cadets. So one of the things that we talk about is stress, and this is very open. We're very honest about it. Everyone faces stress at some point in their lives. I would be pretty hard pressed to find an individual that goes through their entire life and says they never faced one thing that caused them a little bit of stress. If they have, then they have a miracle cure for everything, and we should all go interview them. There should be a nice newspaper article written about them. That being said, most of us face stress. Really, it's how we handle that stress that impacts our overall well-being. And that's one of the big reasons why we do partner Hokie Wellness and the Corps of Cadets as a whole. A lot of people here or in society tend to think of stress as being negative. How many of you raise your hands nice and high when you hear the word stress, think of something negative? Okay. Most hands are going up, and that's completely normal. We've in a sense been taught to think of stress as being negative. That being said, we do want to share that stress can be beneficial. And there are actually two types of stress. We have it broken down here, eustress and distress. So eustress, we're going to start with that. That's a very positive stressor. That's something that we know is going to challenge us, but we know that we can accomplish it. We know that once we accomplish it, we'll have this sense of fulfillment. It's attainable. We'll be proud of ourselves. An example that I give personally, I'm a runner. Do we have any runners in the room? Not as many hands, but that's okay. I am a very proud runner, so I really like using this as an example. Running, on some days you feel great. It feels easy. On other days you're sitting there and that is the hardest thing that you're doing. At the end of the day though, whether I'm just running an easy run, I'm running a race, I know that when I finish that run, I'll feel proud of myself for having accomplished it. Even if it is hot and humid and muggy as can be out there and I'm struggling while I'm there, I know that I can actually do it. I know that when I step foot on the race line, I know that I can finish it, whether it's a 5K or a half marathon. I feel proud of myself for when I finish having set that PR or having placed. It's something that gives me that sense of fulfillment. And having a little bit of nerves still does help me actually function at my peak performance. A realistic example for all of you, you'll get syllabi at the start of the semester. When you're looking at your syllabi for your classes, the paper or the assignment that's due at the very end of the semester, chances are you're not going to start working on that in August. But maybe around November, you're going to be like, let me go look at that due date again and start working on this, because now that stress, it's beginning to push you to actually get that task done. It's still healthy because you're doing it early enough in advance, but it's going to help power you through so that you actually get that paper or that assignment project, whatever it is, done. Are we all on the same page right now? Okay, awesome. So then distress, that is a very negative stress response. So that's when the perceived threat outweighs the perceived benefit of whatever that task is. When someone is in distress, they tend to have a very negative bodily reaction to it. It impacts both their physical well-being, their emotional well-being, and their mental health. And so this graph down here does a really nice job for anyone who likes visuals of showing you how you do need a little bit of stress to be able to function at your peak. And so that's eustress, that's your performance zone. But for anyone who begins to kind of go over that peak and enter those signs of distress, it may begin to present as fatigue, exhaustion, burnout, eventually breakdown. And we want to be able to give you those tools to keep you from ever getting to that point. We want to keep you functioning in that positive performance zone. Are we all on the same page still? Okay, awesome. So I talked about overall well-being, and one of the things that we really emphasize with Hokie Wellness is holistic well-being. For anyone who's in the health field or who just stays up to date with social media, the word holistic is pretty trendy right now, but we really do view well-being as being the entire part of our human body, of our overall lifestyle. So we look at well-being as different dimensions of wellness, and the best way to describe them is these different dimensions come together to form a spider web. When they all come together, that spider web is nice and strong. It creates a home for that spider to sit there to sustain itself. If one of the dimensions falls off, it's by itself. It's just kind of dangling, and the rest of the spider web is not a solid structure. So with holistic well-being, we really understand that all of the dimensions of wellness come together to form each individual's well-being. That being said, stress has been shown to be the number one impediment to academic success. This is not just something that's here at Virginia Tech. This is national survey data that's showing this. So we understand that stress can impact our academic performance. We also understand that it goes beyond mental health. It can impact physical well-being. It can impact our social well-being. For someone who's under a lot of stress, they may begin to withdraw from activities that at one point sparked a lot of joy in their lives. From a physical well-being standpoint, they may begin to lose sleep. You know, if you're under a lot of stress, you may not be sleeping your best. They may be making poor food choices, which could impact their sleep, because if they're not eating healthy food, we all know poor nutrition can impact sleep. It can also impact their immune system and weaken it. So you see how they all tie together. It's not like one unit can stand alone. That's why we talk about this from the holistic lens and standpoint. All right, so we are going to briefly begin introducing some tips and some skills that we want you to begin implementing, so that way when you are faced with stress, you know how to handle it. One of the tools which we're going to introduce today in a very brief 6-minute video is called the Community Resiliency Model, or CRIM for short. Erica Coates is one of the counselors from Cook Counseling who will be working more closely with you come the fall. Once again, this is a very, very brief introduction to it. So when you leave here today, don't think that you learned everything about CRIM. You will get this in much more depth come the fall semester when you start. That being said, CRIM itself is meant to help individuals learn how to handle stressors in a way that works best for them. And so she'll introduce you to that, and we'll talk about it a little bit afterwards. I also want to say, those of us who have gone through CRIM training, it has been a week-long training, so like 40 hours plus continued professional development. So again, if you have any questions and you leave here being like, I don't really understand this, don't worry, you'll get a much more in-depth training with it come the actual start of the school year, or you can feel free to reach out to myself or CAPT McGrath after this session. But I'm going to go ahead and start the video.
Hi, cadets. My name is Erica. I work at Cook Counseling Center. And like many of the people talking at you these days, I want to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up, a little orientation to some language that you will be hearing around you. So you kind of know a little bit about what folks are talking about. We are going to be training you over time in some of the science behind our fight, flight, freeze, and friend responses. That set of responses is how our autonomic nervous system works. Some of you may remember this back from biology. It's our stress and survival response system. And we teach it across campus, but definitely to cadets, and simplify that science into what we call zone language. So the fight or flight response that many of us know when we feel activated towards a task, needing to take a step, solve it, fix it, change it, problem solve, go, go, go. We call that our high zone. It's very useful for us a lot of the time. We just don't necessarily want to be stuck there. That is very unpleasant. We simplify the language as well around our low zone, which is when we might pull back and away from people. We feel more quiet, or our body wants to be inert, maybe we want to rest or do nothing or sleep. And so we call that the low zone. And with this model, we really pay a lot of attention to what is the space in between the high zone and the low zone. We call that here at Virginia Tech our flow zone. Captain McGrath likes to call it our functional zone, where we can keep functioning with the things that we need to handle and that are important to us, maybe without that really high zone kind of pressured feeling or without that dragging experience of the low zone. So we'll never be able to like stay constantly in the flow zone. That's not possible. We're way too responsive, a species of people. Too much is going on inside us and around us. But this language we find very helpful to share with other people to kind of check in about how we're doing, because it's normal to be any of those three. So we normalize these zones here on our campus, and we also share a few skills, a few brain-based hacks on how to work to refine our flow zone for when we do get bumped out, when there's too much coming at us, too much stress that we're working with. And so your nervous system works uniquely for yourself as an individual. And so we'll be offering skills, and they're kind of like a menu of what will serve you, what helps you find your flow zone. But for today, we wanted to show you, give you a little teaser, I guess, of what the science is about, how some of these skills work, if that serves you. And so a big piece of this model that we teach, it is called the community resiliency model, is kind of a new aspect of what to pay attention to. I was not taught this until relatively recently. What to pay attention to with CRIM is neutral or pleasant sensations. My brain often goes to sensations of task or stress or my conscious thoughts. This model says that if we want to regulate our fight, flight, freeze, or friend response, we're well served to pay attention to neutral or pleasant sensations. So in just a second, someone's going to call you to attention. And while you're at attention, I'll have a few prompts for where you could send your attention, and just kind of let's see what happens. You may like this skill or you may not. So that's fine either way. It's just an opportunity to experiment. So go ahead and stand at
join us,
attention.
please stand at attention. Cadets, I'd encourage you to. Others, if you would like. Heels together, hands at your...
And what I would like you to do is bring your attention to the corners of your eyes, these little muscles, and see if you can just soften them just a little. And now bring your attention to the corners of your mouth and soften those muscles just a tad. Maybe it feels right to you to make a little space between your teeth, letting that jaw muscle relax just a tad. And I'm checking in for myself. Do I notice any more neutral or pleasant sensations? So my body gives this spontaneous breath. That's my nervous system kind of slowing down and settling. It kind of feels like my chest is just settling in and slowing down. And these sensations of a little more ease in my facial muscles is pleasant to me. So you're welcome to go ahead and sit down. Thank you. Good job. So that skill is one of many, and it's just a way to kind of get curious about finding neutral or pleasant sensations. You'll be learning more about this over time. Most of the pro staff and cadre around you have been trained in this model. If you want to go ahead and start using that language of high zone, low zone, flow zone, you're welcome to. So just a little taste of what's to come as we kind of teach you some of the science and give you some opportunities to use it to help you grow your flow zone. So good to be with you. Take care.
So Erica and I developed that exercise. When I say that, Erica developed it and I said it was a good idea. To kind of show you that the tools that we're talking about here that kind of help you deal with stress and focus on neutral and pleasant sensations are things that you can do in the moment. With that one, you're going to be in attention a lot during New Cadet Week. And those are things you don't need to leave. You don't need to go to some quiet room somewhere. These are tools and skills that you can use to deal with stress in the moment so that you can reduce your personal response to the stress so that you can function and do whatever the training activity is or classroom work or whatever the case may be.
All right, so this slide just does a good job of summarizing what Erica talked about in the video. The big thing with community resiliency model is that it has begun to shift the perspective of how we handled stress as once being a sign of mental weakness and or toughness, depending on the individual, to helping us understand that it is very much a physiological response. So how we initially handle that stress isn't necessarily something that we can control. But by growing and building these tools and skills, we're able to broaden our bandwidth. So that way, when we are faced with a stressful situation and say we get bumped out of our flow zone, we can get back into it when we're ready. So that'll take me to the graph on your right. And so this goes ahead and really does a nice job of demonstrating or visualizing the flow zone. As you can see, and as we talked about, the flow zone is where people are able to think clearly. They're able to make decisions in a more rational manner. They're not just jumping to conclusions. They're not jumping to that decision because it's in a sense of haste or anxiety that they're doing it, rather able to think clearly and function at their best. The one piece we want to emphasize is everybody's flow zone does vary. So, for example, I may have a broader or more narrow flow zone than CAPT McGrath, but it will not be the exact same bandwidth. So not only with CRIM do we each have different bandwidths, but we want to try to continue to broaden those so that when we are faced with a stressful situation, we're able to handle it better. If and when you will be bumped, some of you may find that you get bumped into your high zone. And in your high zone, you may begin to notice that you seem more anxious or in a state of panic. Maybe you're a little bit more irritable or edgy. You may notice these signs in somebody else, and that's recognizing that they've been bumped out of their flow zone. If someone gets bumped into their low zone, they may begin to show signs of depression or sadness, fatigue, that exhaustion gets kicked in. Again, how we end up getting bumped does vary from person to person. So you may be faced with the exact same task, but it may bump you into your high zone and your roommate into their low zone. That being said, we want you both to be able to get back into your flow zone when ready. The image in the middle is Josie. Josie is one of our therapy dogs here on campus. Rami is her handler, who is also part of Cook Counseling. You will probably meet Josie at some point in your time here on campus, if not within your first year. But Josie's our poster dog for CRIM. If you go into any building on campus, you'll see flyers, you'll see digital screens, you'll even see her on social media. But she does a good job of demonstrating what some of the signs of the flow zone, high and then low zones are. Once again, these are not all encompassing, and we recognize that it is very individualistic, so it depends on you as the person. Any questions thus far? Okay. So to build off of that, CRIM is really 5 skills that you can use to cope with stress, and you will go into all of these in a lot more detail in your first semester. That being said, the 5 skills are tracking, resourcing, grounding, gesturing, and help now. Everyone has a different skill that will probably resonate better with them. That's a tool that they can utilize. Again, this may vary between you and your roommate. It varies between me and CAPT McGrath. I can say one of the ones that I tend to utilize more is resourcing. So with resourcing, think of a person, place. It could be a pet. I'm a big dog person. Anyone a dog person in here? Okay, so whenever I am in a stressful situation, thinking of my dog, no matter how wild at times she can be, I tend to end up cracking a smile when I talk about her. But whatever it is, that stressful situation, I can bump myself back into my flow zone just thinking about my dog. It brings me those pleasant sensations that Erica was talking about. It could be different for everyone. For some of you, you may think back to a fun family vacation. It could be the beach. It could be, playing a certain instrument, whatever that is. Again, you'll learn more about these tools come the fall. All right, so we talked about CRIM as one tool that we can use to help mitigate and navigate stressful situations, but we do understand that everyone copes differently. And so there are different tools that you can each use. So we do try to tie in, again, the different dimensions of wellness. So really looking at this from a holistic lens. And we've picked 3 top ones that people tend to use and turn to for coping. So the first one is spirituality. The one piece I really want to emphasize with spirituality is that religion does not equal spirituality. It can be part of spirituality. So for some people, it is religion. It is having that deity. But for the actual definition of spirituality, it's finding peace with oneself. So doing an activity that allows you to find peace with yourself. That could be meditation. That could be going out for a walk in nature. That could be journaling. Again, it could also very much be going to church or saying a prayer, but it is different and they are not it's not synonymous. And that's just one thing that we really want to emphasize. We don't want anyone to feel like because they're not religious, they can't turn to spirituality. Physical activity. So I mentioned I'm a runner. When I am stressed, I do try to go out for a run as soon as possible following that stressful situation. I personally find that after I go out for the run, I come back, I'm able to work more efficiently, my head's clearer, whatever it was that stressed me out is no longer stressing me out. That being said, I also recognize that running can cause a lot of stress for individuals. So I'm not telling you to go out for a run. Rather, find something that works for you. If it's lifting weights, hey, we have 2 fantastic gyms here on campus that you will have access to. If it's playing on an intramural sports team, we have that available to you too. You can find some form of physical activity. Last but not least is our social support. And this one really is huge. So social support, that's family that you've been born into and family that you get to choose. So that overlaps with your friends. These can be friends here at Tech. It can be friends from back home, friends that have gone to a whole other university. But someone that you can turn to, you can call, you can talk to when things get tough, when time is stressful, and you know that you'll be able to come out of that in a much better position. And then last but not least, campus resources. So we have a variety of campus resources here at Tech that are all here to serve the students, including you all as cadets. So I'm from Hokie Wellness. We're one of the departments that's here to serve you, but Cook Counseling, Schiffer Health Center, your academic advisors, everyone here within the core, from your fire team leaders all the way up through the deputy commandants. They've been in your shoes before. They're here as a resource. They're here to serve you and they want you to succeed. So that takes us into our growth mindset for mental toughness. We have not sugarcoated it thus far. We're not going to start. This is not an easy journey. You're going to face a lot of challenges and you're going to fail. And we want to begin normalizing that word failure. It's okay to fail. It's not something that you should look at and be afraid of failing. Rather, looking at that failure and being like, all right, why did I fail? And how can I bounce back so that I come back even stronger and better moving forward? We also want to emphasize that it's going to take a lot of time and dedication to master these skills. CAPT McGrath said you're not going to be perfect on day one, and very few people are perfect when they walk out of here and graduate. We're human beings. We make errors. It's okay to make those mistakes, but take every step that you've made as progress and celebrate that and be proud of it, knowing that you're putting in that work ethic. We also want to emphasize that you are not alone. You're not the first cadet, nor are you the last cadet to go through this. It is going to be challenging, and it's going to be different things are going to challenge you compared to what's going to challenge your training buddy and your roommate. Be aware of that and know how you can rely on each other to help each other out. So an example I give, my brother also came to Virginia Tech and did the Corps himself. He is now a captain in the U.S. Air Force, but his freshman year was challenging. It was tough. He came in, he did not know how to shine shoes for the life of him. That being said, his roommate had done junior ROTC in high school, and he taught him all the little tips and tricks needed in order to shine his shoes. My brother was never written up for having dull shoes. He was actually always complimented for how shiny his shoes looked. That being said, my brother's roommate really struggled to keep a room clean. He just didn't seem to know how to clean a room. We had been taught how to clean our rooms from a very young age. So that's how my brother worked with his roommate to make sure that their room always passed inspection. So you see, they worked together on that. It wasn't you're on your own little island, good luck, survive. So it is really important that you understand you're not alone in this journey. Your cadre are also here to help you. Everyone, all of your superiors are really here to help you and have been in your shoes before. We really do want you to have a realistic plan. And so we'll begin to talk about that a little bit more, but understanding that you are going to face these challenges, knowing that that is very true, it's realistic. So what are you going to do to prepare yourself for when the going gets tough? You know how to handle it. You're not going to back down. All right, so I mentioned that we have a lot of different resources. Both the Corps of Cadets and Hokie Wellness fall under the Division of Student Affairs, and here are some other major resources that can all be a tool for you as students here at Tech. That being said, we also have our academic partners. So once again, your professors, your academic advisors, they are also here as resources for you. Okay, so family summer support. I'm sitting here in this room and I'm seeing a lot of individuals who look like they're family members. And so you do play a very large part in the role and in the success of your cadet. So how can you start being of service right now? Like literally when you leave this room? Well, you can start having some conversations with your cadet. One thing I want to emphasize, cadets and family members, this conversation and communication should be a two-way street. It should never end up one-sided. So if you find that the conversation is becoming one-sided, maybe take a pause, table it, and then go back to when you're both ready to have the conversation again. So communication is always a two-way street. So Captain McGrath talked about this at the beginning, but being able to understand what is your why? Why are you embarking on this journey? What has driven you to this point right now, and what is the long-term outcome? So obviously, one of the outcomes should be graduating and getting that degree. You are all here as students, but then what do you want to do? Do you want to be a career-long military person? Do you want to work for the government afterwards? What service do you want to go into? I recommend for some people writing down your goal. It's helpful. That way you have it. You always see it. Some people write it down and that becomes their background on their laptop so that every time they open up their laptop, they're reminded of their why. Other individuals seem to work pretty well just being able to vocalize it, and then they keep that ingrained in their memory. And whatever works for you, do that. But being able to articulate your long-term goals will be extremely beneficial, especially when you are faced with those obstacles. When you're faced with that hurdle and you don't know if you can really make that jump, remembering your why will help propel you forward. Again, this is not something that's going to come really easily. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will your mastery of a lot of the skills that you need to master to be successful here. They're not going to come within your first week on campus. We're just going to be honest about it. But don't let those struggles and those setbacks keep you from moving forward. So understanding that it is important to have that discipline and dedication as you progress through your time being a cadet. I do want to call attention to this quote here that looks like Yoda wrote it. It says, "Don't be afraid to fail, be afraid not to try." So many people are afraid of failure that they never embark on that journey because they don't want to say that they failed. That being said, though, it's through failure that we all learn and grow. And every single person here has already learned and grown from a past failure. One of my friends was doing Peloton, and she said the Peloton instructor actually said, failure are just successes that haven't been achieved yet. And I thought that was a really nice little quote. If you let yourself, if you're too afraid to try something, you're never going to be able to succeed. It's okay to fail. All right, so family conversation starters. You may see me holding this trifold brochure in my hand. We have them outside at the Hokie Wellness table, and you will, emphasis on the you will, pick one up before you leave because it is really beneficial. So this is a nice conversation starter for families and their cadets to begin having now as soon as they leave, not 3 weeks down the road, not as you're coming back for new cadet week. At that point, it may be a little late to start having these conversations. So start having them as soon as you leave here today. But when you go through, we've broken it down into segments. So again, going through what is your why? Being able as a cadet to fully articulate this is extremely important. We then break it down into family expectations. So as a family, what are your expectations for your cadet? Cadet, what are your expectations for your family members? Setting realistic expectations right off the bat are really important. Being transparent and knowing how you want communication to occur is also really important. So an example I give here, I personally, if I need someone to just kind of back me up and support me on anything, I call my dad. He is a giant teddy bear. So when I call him, he's like, okay, yeah, no, that's fine. Like the person's like, it's okay, honey, don't worry. If I want someone who's going to be realistic and hold me accountable, it's my mother. And so she's very supportive and she'll listen to me, but then she'll also be like, all right, you got yourself into this mess, so how are you going to get yourself out of it? That type of situation. So that tough love mentality. On the flip side, it is important to understand that when your cadet calls you, you may be getting a different version of them than what you expected. Captain McGrath equates it to the Inside Out characters from the movie. So, yeah. So being able to understand, okay, who's going to call in this situation, depending on what's been thrown at them today, and how do they want me to react? These are all conversations that you need to begin having right now. We have a section on mental toughness. And so again, going back to that word failure, you're going to hear it a lot. And again, it's okay to fail, but rather use it as productive failure or constructive failure. So you're not just going to sit there and then give up because you failed, but rather you'll be like, all right, what can I do to get better next time? So if it's that you currently struggle to run a 5K or a mile, whatever it may be, maybe knowing what the requirements for your branch are and start working on that now. Or if it's like, you know what, I need to master my push-ups or sit-ups because I currently bottom out after 10 push-ups. Start working on that now. You take that failure and you use it to become productive so that you can succeed moving forward. We have a section on global citizenship. Every student here at Virginia Tech is expected to be a productive member of society. So you all as cadets are in that situation yourselves. You're in that boat. So with that, being aware of certain things, being aware of the fact that your actions not only reflect you, but they reflect the Corps, they reflect your prospective branch, they reflect the university as a whole. Knowing how to have conversations with other individuals. You may be living with one other person, you may be living with two of them. Understanding that eventually that honeymoon phase will end and you're probably going to butt heads at some point. It's just the reality of it. No roommate situation goes without any form of argument at least once in their entire 4 years. And that's completely normal. But rather, how can you have those conversations in a productive manner? How can you have conversations with people who maybe don't have the same viewpoints as you? You don't have to adopt their viewpoints, but you have to be able to respect them as a human being and understand that they have the right to their viewpoints, to their perspective, and to their beliefs, and being able to still get along with them as human beings. And then last but not least, we have a section on healthcare. So Shifford Health Center is one of our resources, again, under the Division of Student Affairs. You all have access to Shifford as students. So if you were to get sick, you have healthcare, you have providers here on campus. If you were to be prescribed medication, so say you get strep or a sinus infection, you don't have to worry about leaving campus to go get your prescription filled. We have a pharmacy on campus. For anyone who has any pre-existing medical conditions, being able to ensure that your provider from home has had a conversation with Shifford Health Center, and that way your medical records are up to date, that's also really important. The last thing we really want to emphasize is you're never in this alone. So I cannot say that enough today. You have the support of your roommates, your training buddies, your leaders within the Corps, but you have the support of the entire university and all these resources here that really are filled with individuals that want you to succeed. So if you ever find yourself struggling, please reach out for help. We are here to serve you, and that we want to see you graduate and become successful members of the military, or you know, if you go into the civilian workforce, just like we are. Do you have any questions for us? Okay, you don't have to have any questions for me.
I do one more thing on the healthcare piece. We mentioned Shifford can handle your basic medical care if you get sick, you sprain your ankle. If it's something beyond that, and you might have to go back out in town, another good conversation for parents to have with their cadets is, what is the insurance? How do I handle insurance? Who do I call for those sorts of things? I mentioned during the earlier session, FERPA is a conversation you need to have, because we can't talk to you about your student unless we have a FERPA code and they've authorized that conversation. The other one that catches a lot of parents off guard is, if your son or daughter goes to the emergency room for some reason, do not expect a phone call from us. That's a conversation you need to have to make sure that your cadet has you as the first or second person they call when they get to the emergency room. Not that we're being cold and uncalculating. That's information that we're not allowed to share with you. They have to share it. So that's, or, you know, have conversation with friends that they'll call, but we can't do those sorts of things. So that it's not, again, we're not trying to be cruel or mean, just recognizing those are the kinds of conversations good idea to have some of those in advance, so that you have what we would call in the military pre-planned responses. So unless anyone has any further questions, our next presentation will be here in about 5 minutes. Nicole Freeman is going to come talk to you a little bit about the scholarship offers that the Corps has for you as a cadet. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.